Robert Lee Frost was an American poet. His work was initially published in England before it was published in America. He writes simply but insightfully about common, ordinary experiences. He was honored frequently during his lifetime, and he is the only poet to receive four Pulitzer Prizes for poetry. The poet talks about two roads in the poem. In fact, the two roads are two alternative ways of life. Robert Frost wants to tell that the choice we make in our lives has a far reaching result. The poem represents a dilemma that every man faces in his life. Now come to the poem. One day, Arthur was walking in a forest. Now let us see stanza wise explanation. Once the poet was walking down a road, and then there was a diversion. There were two different paths, and he had to choose one out of them. The poet says that as he was one person, he could not travel on both roads. He had to choose one out of these two roads. Yellow wood means a forest with the leaves which are wearing out and they have turned yellow in color. It indicates the season of autumn. It represents a world which is full of people where people have been living for many years. They represent people who are older than the poet. The poet kept standing there and looked at the path very carefully as far as he could see it. Before taking the path, he wanted to know how it was. He was able to see the path till from where it curved, after which it was covered with trees and was hidden. It happens in our life also when we have choices. We have alternatives, but we have to choose only one out of them. We take time to think about the advantages and disadvantages, whether it is suitable for us or not. And then only we take a decision on what path we should choose. Now the poet is standing in front of the two roads. The poet kept on looking at one path for a long time to check if it is the right path for him or not. And then he decided and started walking on another path because he felt that the both paths were equally good. He says just as fair. So he felt that both paths were equally good and started walking on one of them. He adds that maybe he felt that the path was better for him, so he chooses it as it had grass on it, which means that it was unused. Not many people had walked on this path earlier. That is why this path was grassy and wanted wear. It means that it was not walked over by many people. After he walked on the path for some distance, he realized that both the paths had been worn out the same way. Both the paths were similar and worn out. Even in our life, we take any path or option, but all of them have the same benefits, disadvantages, problems, challenges, and we must face them. We think that we are choosing a better option, but it is not that way. The poet says in the stanza 3, the paths were similar that morning. Both had leaves on them, and no one had stepped on them, as they were still green in color. He decided that day he would take only one path and keep the other path for another day, although he knew that one way leads on to the another way. He knew that he could not go back on the choice that he had made. Similarly, even in our life, once we choose an option, we must keep on moving ahead with that option, and we never get a chance to come back and take the other option that we had left earlier. After he traveled on the second road, which one is less traveled by others, he can say that in the future he will take a deep breath and say that once upon a time he had reached such a point in life that there were two options for him, and he traveled on that road which had been traveled upon by lesser number of people. That decision of his decider is future. Similarly, in future, when you grow up, then you will say that once upon a time when you were young, you had two options. The choice that you made you what you become of it. This is a very strong message for all the students that you should be wise and be careful while making choices out of the options that you have in your life, because your future depends on the choice that you make today. Namaste.